In just a few short months, we've already seen Vice President JD Vance speak and act on his faith on numerous occasions. From his historic inauguration as the second Catholic vice president in U.S. history to the pivotal ways his faith has shaped his role in the Trump administration, JD Vance has brought a unique perspective to the national stage. As a convert who embraced Catholicism in 2019, Vance's story is one of personal transformation and public service, often sparking inspiration and sometimes debate among Catholics and beyond. So now let's take a look at the top 10 Catholic moments of the Vance vice presidency so far. Number 10. On St. Patrick's Day, JD Vance was spotted giving a Dominican father a tour of the White House press briefing room. The vice president actually has a history with the Dominican order that helped lead him on his path to conversion. In his 30s, he started visiting St. Gertrude Church, a Dominican-led parish in Cincinnati, Ohio. There, he met Father Henry Stephan, a Dominican friar with whom he engaged in months of discussions about theology, mysticism, and philosophy. In August 2019, Vance was baptized and received his first communion at St. Gertrude's private Dominican chapel by Father Stephan. Number 9. On Ash Wednesday, while departing Texas after a visit to the U.S.-Mexico border at Eagle Pass, a Catholic priest administered ashes on the vice president's forehead before he boarded Air Force Two. This moment, captured on video by C-SPAN, occurred as Vance observed the start of Lent alongside other members of the Trump administration. The event drew attention due to his public display of faith during an official trip. Number 8. At a February conference in Munich, JD Vance quoted Pope John Paul II while addressing the audience. In his speech, Vance concluded by referencing the late Pope's famous phrase, "Do not be afraid," saying, "We shouldn't be afraid of our people even when they express views that disagree with their leadership." He described John Paul II as one of the most extraordinary champions of democracy on this continent or any other, tying the quote to his broader argument about democratic values and free expression. This moment was widely noted by attendees and media covering the event. Number 7. During the vice president's address at the International Religious Freedom Summit in January, Vance discussed the origins of religious liberty and credited Tertullian's ideas as influential. Specifically, he highlighted Tertullian's argument from the 3rd century that it is only just and a privilege inherent in human nature that every person should be able to worship according to his own convictions. Vance used this to support his point that religious freedom is rooted in Catholic principles, noting that Thomas Jefferson owned and annotated a copy of Tertullian's writings, which is now held in the Library of Congress. Number 6. Vice President Vance visited the rebuilt Notre Cathedral in Paris, France, in February of 2025, during his first official overseas trip. He was accompanied by his wife and their 3 children. The visit occurred in the evening, between Vance's attendance at an artificial intelligence summit in Paris and his upcoming engagements at the Munich Security Forum later that week. The newly restored interior featured a new cedar reliquary for the Crown of Thorns, a relic Vance has expressed personal devotion to, as noted in his past comments about praying for the Pope with his children. Number 5. Vice President Vance delivered a speech at the 52nd Annual March for Life rally on January 24, 2025 in Washington, D.C., marking his first public address after being sworn into office. The event, held on the National Mall near the Washington Monument, drew tens of thousands of anti-abortion activists, despite frigid temperatures that had forced inauguration events indoors earlier that week. In his speech, Vance highlighted personal experiences, noting the indescribable beauty of new life he and his wife witnessed with their children. He framed the pro-life movement as a joyful cause, praising the crowd's resilience in the cold and their efforts, such as supporting diaper banks and crisis pregnancy centers. Number 4. Vice President Vance discussed Catholicism, during his appearance at the Conservative Political Action Conference on February 20th. In an onstage interview, he spoke about his faith as part of a broader conversation. He described himself as very pro-life and a devout Catholic, emphasizing that his belief in God's grace guides his actions. He stated, "We put our faith in God above. We put our faith in the grace of God, and we try our best to do His will." This discussion tied into his advocacy for policies that encourage Americans to choose life and start families, aligning his faith with his political priorities. Number 3. JD Vance brought significant attention to the Order of Charity during an interview with Sean Hannity on Fox News. Responding to a question about immigration policy and perceived liberal compassion for non-citizens over Americans, Vance articulated what he called an old-school Catholic concept. He said, "You love your family, and then you love your neighbor, and then you love your community, and then you love your fellow citizens in your own country, and then after that, you can focus and prioritize the rest of the world." He argued that this hierarchy reflects a natural and Christian prioritization of compassion, starting with those closest to oneself, and suggested that the far left had inverted this order by prioritizing outsiders over citizens. He rooted his view in the writings of St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas, who argued that love should be ordered based on proximity and relationship, with God first, then self, then family, and extending outward. Number 2. Vice President Vance delivered a speech at the 20th Annual National Catholic Prayer Breakfast in late February. The event was attended by approximately 1,400 Catholics. He framed his speech as a reflection on being a Catholic convert in public life, calling himself a baby Catholic due to his 2019 baptism. He emphasized humility, acknowledging, "There's a lot I don't know," and expressed a desire not to misrepresent the faith through his own shortcomings. Vance concluded by leading attendees in a prayer for Pope Francis, who was hospitalized with pneumonia, quoting a 2020 homily from the Pope about Christ calming the storm. Number 1. The Vice President was critical of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops over their stance on immigration policy and their perceived alignment with progressive priorities. In a CBS interview, Vance argued that the bishop's opposition to Trump's immigration policy was compromised by financial interests, claiming the bishops had received over $100 million in federal grants for refugee resettlement programs. "I think it's fair to ask whether some of our religious leaders are motivated by principle or by grants from the federal government," he said, suggesting their humanitarian stance was tainted by reliance on public funds. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops denied that grants influenced their position and cited church teaching on welcoming the stranger.